without further ado, I'm going to kick it off because we're already running behind. Thanks, Dolly. And I'm going to bring up our panel backstage. Okay, great. You already heard about Robert a little bit, but I've known him for years. 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, he entered this industry as really a thought leader. And he prides himself at Miner & Co. in using research and analytics to make crappy television better. So you can thank him for the quality of television out there. He is truly a thought leader. He helps us all look at the industry differently every single year. There's almost no television company and media company who does entertainment in this industry who hasn't worked with Robert over the years. So the experience and the insights he brings you is really just a huge asset that we appreciate every single year. So without further ado, to introduce you to your first panel of the day, let me bring to the stage Mr. Robert Miner.
Good, that's what we like to hear. All right. Grab a seat anywhere, guys, and we'll pass around microphones. So this says, welcome to the industry. We like to call this welcome to the disrupted industry. So as we're looking at this landscape here, it bears very little resemblance to the landscape that many of us grew up with, except for some of our panelists who are just about the same age as you are. And we like to have that range so that you don't think that this is just aspirational. It's achievably aspirational. That's sort of our goal here today. So proof point for that, my co-moderator today, Nicolette, is currently studying at Hunter College, but also she works with me making crappy television shows just a little bit better. Okay? So with that, also, when we did this panel in the past, I used to give these long, voluminous introductions to all of my panelists, and then we would say, so tell us what you do. And they're like, you just said everything for us. So we do things a little bit differently now. Each panelist is going to introduce themselves, tell us in their own words what they do. And with that, Nicolette, what do you do?
Right, so I've been working with Robert for a year and some change now, and I'm on his research team. So as part of my dedication to making crappy television better, I will join him on focus groups, ethnographies, we'll write surveys. I will talk to people who watch a lot of TV. I'll talk to people about what they want to see, what they don't want to see, and why. And I'll go right back to the network and I'll tell them, and hopefully they listen, and hopefully crappy television gets a little better.
Great, perfect. So take on your panelists now, Nicolette.
All right, so we're just gonna go down the line here. Introduce yourself, your name, your title, what you do, and what you think about it, what your day-to-day is like.
Good morning. My name is Robin Alston, and I am the Vice President of Legal and Business Affairs at A&E Networks. So A&E Networks is A&E, History Channel, Lifetime, FYI, Lifetime Movie Network. And in my group, I'm in the content group, and I do all the agreements to get the shows on TV. So for the most part, the networks, the major networks, they don't produce these shows in-house. They are going to contract out with different production companies to produce the shows, and we do that on what's called a work-for-hire basis. So I do all of those agreements and deals with those production companies. I do it for unscripted. So you probably know my network for a lot of the unscripted shows, Dance Moms, or Rap Game, or Pawn Stars, Duck Dynasty. Those are all shows that are on our networks. And we also do scripted. So it's Christmas time, and I don't know if you all have started. We have started. It is Christmas at work. And so I do all the Lifetime Christmas movies. I handle those deals. And then we have the bigger ticket movies, the Patsy and Loretta scripted movies. A lot of that is done out of LA, but I work on those as well. So I also do talent deals that are associated with those, so unscripted talent deals for the Abbeys and the Jermaine Dupri's that are on our networks. And then in the scripted world, it can be the producer deals and the writer deals and the director deals, dealing with the guilds, the WGA, SAG-AFTRA. All of that falls within my group. But legal is large, and we're talking about, you don't even really sometimes realize what parts of the media industry that you don't see. So I kind of have on the obvious side of legal. Maybe you don't know how it gets done, but you know there's somebody probably making sure that the talent have contracts and that the people who produce the shows have contracts, but there are also the people who work with research. We have lawyers who do research, we have lawyers who do distribution, we have lawyers under the digital side. We're an international worldwide company, so we have international agreements. So I'm just a piece of that. I'm sort of, I guess, at the beginning of what happens for our networks, and then it just spreads out from there. That's what I do. Oh, my day-to-day?
Yes.
Oh, wow. It can range from finding out where somebody's money is because they haven't gotten paid. That can take, that's a big deal. It can take a part of my day. But mostly I am negotiating with agents and attorneys on the contract. So drafting the contracts. And we're not a large group. So, we're pretty hands-on. And you can split up. So if you ever hear I'm business affairs, that actually means you do most of the negotiating. Legal affairs is the lawyers who draft the contracts. So oftentimes the departments are separated like that. We are both business and legal affairs, so I'm doing all the negotiating and all the drafting. So that's pretty much my day. Is we're a very collaborative group. So I pop in and out of people's offices all day. If I need to get some input from my colleagues on a deal, something they have done, a lot of it is what have we done in the past? What's precedent? What we don't want to do something that's not precedential for our company that's going to lead us in the wrong direction. There's strategy around movies, and we're chasing Hallmark, so there's a lot of conversations about that. And I work with my clients, who would be the programming group, on just strategizing and getting their content out there into the world and not getting sued.
Very cool, thank you. And it's a complicated landscape. You're also dealing with, what are windowing agreements, what everything that's rolling on there. We'll dig into how this landscape has changed from when you first were heading into it.
Yes, tremendously.
Right.
Yes.
And Katie, tell us who you are, your title, and what that actually means.
Well, first, I just want to say I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really thrilled to be on this panel with all of these great ladies, and you, Robert, as well, of course.
I'm gender neutral.
Technically an all-female panel, though, and this is my third all-female panel of this year, which I just think is really cool. So,
Cool.
So my name is Katie Lombardi. I lead the digital team for Spectrum Networks. So a lot of you might not be as familiar with Spectrum Networks. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about us and what we do, and I think there's a few other people here from the same, from my company, some of my colleagues, and there will be other panels today. I'm seeing hands waving at me. So there will be more panels later today. I encourage you to check those out and hear from them as well. You'll hear a lot more about Spectrum Networks and what we do in the local news space. So Spectrum Networks is the local programming division of Charter Communications. And so we operate over 30 local networks, so local news networks and 2 regional sports networks out in Los Angeles. And so what I do, I lead the digital team. So that entails content strategy, execution, product strategy, and also includes some, driving innovation across the way we tell stories across platforms. So it could be anything from podcasts to digital explainer series to our social strategy and redesigning our websites, our apps, right? So if we go and decide to launch a new app, that would fall within my responsibility. So I lead a team of over 60 people. They're creating content. They're working with journalists in our different newsrooms throughout the country to create digital content. And it's really fun. Every day is really, really different. A lot of it, a lot of my day is spent on phone calls and meetings, but that could range from being on a call to discuss the strategy for, the 2019 elections, which are right around the corner, or looking ahead to the 2020 elections and what is our local strategy for how we're gonna really, create content that will inform and educate, the different communities that we serve. We recently, over the past year and a half, we've launched 4 new podcasts. So a lot of that has meant, we're kind of breaking new ground for us. We're sitting in a room with the reporters who we work with and just kind of figuring it out, creating a game plan, creating a strategy, and then pulling in experts either externally or within our own organization to help us, launch new content. So I think it's really exciting. I think we'll talk a little bit more about, what advice we would give, but I will kind of say that the best part of my day is working with, the people that I work with. I think that's a really important thing. We were talking a little bit about this before, is just surrounding yourself with people who you really like, who you really respect, working for those people and also working with those people. And that's what makes the work even more fun and rewarding. No matter what that work may be, the projects will change, but if you're working with people towards a common goal, it's it's that much more enjoyable when you work really well together.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you.
course.
And Spectrum has been a great partner to the one-day immersion. Last year, Cheryl Wills was actually on the same panel as you are today, and it's great. And so much of this industry is about long-term partnerships. The people who you're networking with today, years down the line, you're going to find that you're still crossing over with them. I work with ODI, I worked with Spectrum before I worked with Time Warner Cable. Your CEO was my client when he was the CEO of Cablevision. So everything which you'll find just over time here, never badmouth anybody, listen to people, do your best, because you're going to cross over with these same people again. So never think that you're better or worse than anybody who's out there. These connections continue. And on that same theme, Tori was in the audience here just 2 years ago. For the last year, she was working on Orange is the New Black. So she's went from attending PACE and being here at One Day Immersion to now being one of our esteemed panelists. So Tori, thank you for joining us.
Here. A lot like what Robert was saying, yes, you never know when you're going to interact with any of these people that you're meeting today again. So it's always good to keep up with these connections, follow up, just say, hey, how was your holiday? And you end up in places you never expect. Like I never expected to be here. So thank you, Robert, and thank you all for being here the day after Halloween. So anyway, I am Tori. I'm the approvals coordinator for a company called Proximity Productions, and we are focusing on developing a new TV show. Cannot reveal what that is according to my NDA, but I can say that it will be on cable television in 2020. And what my position is, it doesn't exactly exist on any other TV show. They kind of created it just for these showrunners. So what I do is I make sure that I acquire any idea or any final product that needs to be submitted to the showrunners and that they see it in order to give their final approval or to give any feedback before we end up shooting whatever that is. So I get to interact a lot with all of these different departments, whether it's costume wardrobe, hair and makeup, props, set decorating, art. And I make sure that whatever it is, if it's a set or, coffee cup, that, the showrunners are able to get their feedback. And then other things that could pop up in my job are clearance things too, So for example, if we want to use a book, all right, well, can we legally do it? And so I get to interact even, with Warner Brothers Clearance as well and their legal team. Just to make sure that we have, a good show and that we're pretty kudos to shoot, no troubleshooting. So my day-to-day, what it looks like is, I show up at the office, I have like all of these logs to make sure, everything systematically works and that we get everything done in a timely manner, because time is of the essence in television. And then every morning I meet with all the different departments and make sure that I wrangle what needs to be done for the day, what needs to be done for the next day, the next week. And then just prepping for future episodes as well with whatever scripts that we're given. I read through all of the new scripts, make sure anything that changes that we adjust accordingly. And then oftentimes there will be questions from other departments like, oh, well, what is the idea that they're going for? Do we want to go with a very creepy, eerie backdrop? Is that coming from us or is that coming from VFX? So I also coordinate these conversations as well with the showrunners, which is really rewarding because it ends up being this giant collaborative process too. And it's really important to work with teams that you like and to have a good rapport with them too. That's essentially what I do, yeah.
Perfect, and thank you, Tori. And Zenita has been with us since One Day Immersion was a glimmer in Dolly's eyes, and Dolly's eyes glimmer a lot, which is why we're all here now. So, Zenita, tell us the story.
And hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be back here again. This is our lucky 7th year, right? So this is awesome. So my name is Zenita Henderson. I work for the Society of Cable Telecommunications Engineers, which is an international society of broadband experts. A lot to say. And so what my society does, there's 3 main associations in the cable industry. There's the Society of Cable Telecommunications Engineers that does all the training for the installers straight through to the C-suite. We have about 800 modules online courses for all of the engineers and non-engineers in our industry. We do have non-technical courses in our library for anyone who's interested in understanding cable and the origins of cable. We offer that completely online as well as on-site boot camps, straight through to the suites, the C-suite. We have executive leadership courses that we offer with Tuck at Dartmouth, as well as with Georgia Tech. So we have a lot of programs that we run through the cable industry. We're about almost 20,000 members strong. We have about 10,000 certified members in our society. We work with the NCTA, which is the National Cable Telecommunications Engineers. National Cable Television Association, who basically goes and lobbies for all of our rights to be able to have broadband and be able to use it the way we want to. So please, give it up for the NCTA. And then also for Cable Labs, which they're a society we work very closely with. They look at technology from 3 to 5 years out and do a lot of standards and things around that. And then it is our job at the SCTE to then create the ANSI standards for all of the great technology that's being launched on the cable networks right now, and to actually operationalize it, create the training for it, and then to work with all the cable operators to be able to deploy that technology to you. So that's what the SCTE does. And we also have the largest cable show in the Americas, which is the Cable Tech Expo, which we just had last month, down in New Orleans. And so that is our charge as well, where we work with each of those associations to execute a show to bring all of the cable executives in to tell you all of the great advances in the cable industry with technology.
Perfect, and thank you, Zenita.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to jump with the next question, then Nicolette will moderate from there. So, a lot of folks, they start out like, how did you get to where you are? And, I'm here in college and I'm planning my path to my career. Sometimes that's a fairly linear and logical path, and sometimes it's really peripatetic and it's all over the place. So, let's start with Zenita. Zenita, what was your path to where you are today?
I was going to be a nurse. So I was actually going to nursing school, and then over a summer, decided to take a job at a small cable distributorship that was in my neighborhood. And then from there, ended up at an actual vendor, one of the largest vendors in the cable industry at that time. It was Gerald, which has gone through a lot of migrations since that time period, back in 1988. But yes, I was going to be a nurse. But I have flipped it to, I still take care of people, just in the cable industry.
And how many different roles or organizations have you been through to get to where you are now?
Oh, geez. Okay, so I started out as a data entry operator, customer service, community relations, trade show coordinator, a marketing manager, senior marketing manager, and then to a director, and then I stayed with that one company which literally went from Gerald to GI to Motorola to Google for like a split second, but I got great stock options for that. And then went from Google to Aris to now it's known as CommScope, is that what they are now. Right. I was with them for 28 years. I stayed at one company for 28 years, which is unheard of in any industry. But yes, survived all of the transitions. And then as I was negotiating our business agreement with the SCTE, I was asking, Mark is awesome, who is our CEO, I was asking him, I really gotten into CRM and data and all the stuff that you're working on, Rob. And I was saying, Mark, I need to get all this stuff because I'm really into it. We do some great things around it at our company. And he said, yeah. He goes, well, we don't have that, but you can come over here and create that for us. And that's how I got my job. And I think earlier someone mentioned, be nice to everybody, because that is how I got my job.
Yep.
Working with Mark for all those years, he knew me, and the fact that I came to him with some really great new information that we were looking at, he asked me to come over and create it for the SCT.
Yep, yeah, and again, I'll just reinforce, I was raised being told the production associate you yell at today is going to be the producer who fires you tomorrow. So, just always bear in mind the long path. Tori, your path to where you are today.
It's a very short path comparatively. But I came to college, I kid you not, as an acting student, graduated with a BA in acting here at Pace. But I knew I wanted to be a producer, so I was like, okay, how do I get my foot in the door for this? Initially, I wanted to be a theater producer, and then I was like, nah, I really want some money. Let's be a TV producer. So it was a lot of networking initially, and I was like, I want to start with development, and I was getting internships that way. But then come to graduation, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep applying, but what about PA work? And I never thought I wanted to do that until I walked onto set one day and handed my resume to the key PA, who's like the boss PA. So I got my first job on The Punisher, season 2, and I was just a day player, which is just like freelancing whenever they need additional people. And my very first day, we were doing this crazy stunt scene with 60 PAs, which is insane. You usually have like 5 or 6. Then I met my future boss who would hire me for Orange is the New Black, and I worked on their full last season for that as a set PA, which was a great experience. I got to, work with background. I got to do a little bit with the main actors. I can't even tell you everything I did just for that one set. So I did that for about 7 months, and then out of the blue, I got an email from some random person. It was like, hey, we're doing this pilot for this show. Someone passed along your name named Michael. Would you be interested to interview? And I was like, I don't know any of these people, but okay. Interviewed, got the job, worked the next day for the pilot. And it turns out one of the writers from Orange is the New Black referred me to Michael, who ended up being the showrunner for the show that I'm currently on. Yeah, I worked on the pilot for that. I worked on a different show that'll be coming out hopefully November, December. And then as soon as the pilot got picked up, they started shooting in September, and they brought me back for that. So here I am.
Lots of different paths. Thank you, Tori. Tell us yours.
So I'm going to rewind a little bit, before high school. I would say I grew up thinking that I would be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. I really liked kids. I liked learning. So I kind of just always had that thought in my mind. And somewhere along the way, I think it was at some point in high school, and then through the college years, I was taking all of these classes like economics and literature and creative writing. And I quickly realized, and I couldn't really put my finger on what I wanted to do, but I realized, I wanted to go in a different path. So how that ended up, I majored in, or at first I was in a liberal arts school at Boston College, and I was taking, all these creative writing classes, which I just loved. And at one point, someone, I think a professor or an advisor, said to me, have you ever thought of being a writer? I had never thought of that. So, after thinking more about it, and this was at this point my sophomore year of college, I'm, thinking about being a writer, thinking about, what would that look like, where would that take me? And I think it was my mom who recommended to me, you're really great at writing. Have you ever thought of marketing? And I hadn't. So a light bulb kind of went off there. I looked into the business school at my college and realized I could switch, get into the business school, get enough credits, and finish all of the courses I needed to finish in the right amount of time to graduate. Took all of these marketing classes, which I loved. Not as great at the accounting and finance classes, but I made it through, and I learned a lot. And I just really enjoyed kind of the whole idea of business and what went into marketing, and it was a lot more than I really had realized. That's kind of when I had this idea that marketing was about like the traditional form of advertising, and it's so much more than that. It includes market research, it includes media buying, campaigning, creative, and there's so much great opportunity in the field of marketing. So when I graduated, I really had it in my head. I thought, it would be cool to work for a magazine. Marketing for a magazine. So I went on all these interviews. I got really close on this one interview, and it was down to me and one other final candidate, and I didn't get the job. And I was so bummed out. It was, this was like the summer after graduation. I was feeling like, just a little bit defeated. And, I decided to just enjoy the rest of summer, keep working. I was at the time working as a babysitter to make money. I figured, let me take a little bit of a break for a couple of weeks and then I'll get back at it. And luck would have it, I was babysitting. And a family friend of this family who I babysat for, I struck up conversation with her. Her husband worked in media. It was like this kind of crazy turn of events that wouldn't really have happened had I taken that other job, and had I not been in a conversation with this woman who was so generous and so friendly and just was asking, what do you want to do? Over the course of a few months, my resume got passed around to a few different people. I had an interview, got in at Madison Square Garden in the marketing department, and was there for 8 years in many different roles, went from marketing to client service to sponsorships. Then I really transitioned to the media side and worked at MSG Networks in the digital department, or the digital marketing department, and that's really where I got my hands on creating content and social media and promoting all of these live games that they were airing, that MSG Networks aired, Knicks, Rangers. Really, it was exciting. I'm a New Yorker, so that was kind of just I felt like it was just this amazing opportunity, and it led me to this career that I really loved. And then through all of these amazing people that I met working there, I was presented with this opportunity to come work for Spectrum. Through people that I met at MSG Networks, I now work for the same boss I've had for almost over 10 years. We spent about a year and a half apart when I worked for in another group at MSG, but she's here today, and we work really well together, and it's just, it's funny how the path kind of changed, and in the moment you don't know what's happening. You kind of organically find your way, and what you were saying earlier, just about being nice to everyone and creating conversations with people and just, helping people. That's what will stand out when a job opportunity arises and someone needs to go out and hire someone, right? They might think of you. And really, that's my long rant. I'll stop now.
Thank you. And all kinds of experiences do cross over. Amazingly enough, experience as a babysitter is probably a very good experience when you start to move into working with some of our executives and some of our creatives. So never be. I often look and I say, oh, you worked in a restaurant. Well, that's pretty stressful, actually. Tell me how you dealt with that. All of those interactions, they do matter. So never feel that you need to downplay anything you've done. Those are connection points that you can talk to that you would be surprised how meaningful they can be. So, Robin, how'd you get here?
So I was an econ major in college, and then I went to law school. And in all honesty, and I'll be very candid, I went to law school because my father was ill, and it was my senior year of college, and he was dying. And he said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, I had older siblings who were working, and they were 10 years older than me, and so they were, by that point, he knew they were going to be fine. He said, "I need to know you're going to be okay." He said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, law school? And he said, "Okay, where?" And so I'm from North Carolina, and at that point, I really realized I was going to come home and stay with my mom for a bit. So, there are 3 perfectly great law schools where I'm from. There's North Carolina Central, UNC, and Duke. My dad was a Dookie. I got into UNC. He was like, "That's really nice and all," but so I got into Duke, and I went to Duke's law school, and that's quite frankly how I ended up in law school. And in my mind, I said, I'll figure it out. I'll go to law school, and I'll figure out what I want to do after I graduate. So you get in law school and you get into this hamster wheel. Like you're following everybody else, and what is everybody doing? They're working for firms. So I'm gonna go work for a firm, you know? And so I ended up working for a law firm, and I didn't quite figure it out. So I went to go work for a rather large law firm in Atlanta. And I did that for about 3 years. I was in securities law. I had taken one securities law class in law school. Didn't really know what that was when I got there, but they asked me, what do you want to do? I said, anything but litigate. So I ended up in corporate and securities law. And I got a call my probably first year there from a pharmaceutical company back home and Research Triangle Park. And I said, heck no, I'm living on my own. This is great. I'm not moving home. They called me a year later. I said, living on my own is overrated. Sure, I'll come home and interview. I came home, I interviewed, I got the job. So I went from securities lawyer to corporate lawyer at GlaxoSmithKline, which was Glaxo Wellcome at the time. So I had a boyfriend, he lived in New York, he lived in Atlanta, then he moved back home to New York, and we got engaged. Glaxo Wellcome was merging with SmithKline Beecham. My VP came to me and said, she's like, I know you're getting married, and I know that your fiance's in New York. I got to cut this department by 20%. Do you want to take a package? And I was like, sure, because I knew I was going to be leaving anyway, so that was a blessing. And I took a package. I moved to New York, and I was like, okay, now what am I going to do? I was like, I have the time. I have some money. I can figure it out. So I thought I was going to work in fashion. I was going to move to New York. I was going to get a job in fashion doing something. I went to FIT, and I sit down in classes. I temped answering phones. I would call my friends at the really, really big law firms at 5 o'clock and go, I'm leaving, I'll see you later, bye. And they would curse at me and hang up the phone. And so I ended up working at Ann Taylor for a second, and I was an assistant. I was an assistant to the vice president of design. I never told her I was a lawyer. Happened to be sitting in, answering phones with the CFO, and heard this woman come in, and I knew enough to go, she's talking about the annual meeting, she's a lawyer. So I introduced myself to her. She said, hey, my GC just went on maternity leave. She's not coming back. I need some help. She hired me as a temp to come in and work. So that's I went from temping and answering phones to back to being a lawyer. That ended, and I still didn't know what I was going to do. And I was getting on the train one day, and I saw a billboard for a judge show. And I was like, hey, I know her. I went in her court when I was in law school and when we were doing pro bono work. Oh, and by the way, she lives in Atlanta. She's a friend of my sister's. So I called my sister and said, will you send my resume? So she puts it in a card. She sends her a note. This is before email was really like everybody. My sister wasn't really in email at all for a while. So she sent me her resume, and probably a year later, I got an interview, and I went in and I started. I hit it off with the woman who was over her, because she did a lot of family court cases over her legal department, and I started working in television, and it was like this. I never thought about it, and I never thought about working in TV, and I was like, this is a cool way to practice law. I was like, this is different, never really thought about it. And so I did syndicated talk. I did Ricky Lake show, I did the Judge Hatchett show, that was my judge, and I moved on to, and I kept going, okay, what's next? So then I went to NBC television distribution. I did the John Walsh show, which was interesting because it was a lot, and it becomes a little bit more. So I went from doing production law to, okay, there's a lot of, he did a lot of crime. So when I'm working with the folks at NBC, then he got canceled. I went to Jane Pauley. And then I started doing the agreements for the talent, for the producers on the show. I started doing their agreements. And so that got canceled, and the woman who was over Pauly went to Martha Stewart, and she called me. She said, hey, I'm going to be doing the Martha Stewart show. Do you want to come over? So I went over to the Martha Stewart show, and I got that up and running. I did all the agreements to staff the show, our guild agreements, and then it was live. So that's something else I hadn't done. It was day to day. I have my headphones on. I'm on the button. So that was different, and you have to be there. Like I've seen 1,000 Martha Stewart shows. But the thing about working that syndicated talk production is you don't have control of your life. There's no vacation, because if they're in production, you have to come to work. You can't plan your life. You're sort of centered around. It was great because I had my summers off. But at some point I said, I need to regroup and figure out what I'm going to do. And if the show's canceled, you got to go look for another job. So I gave myself a year. At the beginning of the season, my last season, I said I need to find another job, and I just started looking. And I knew it was going to take time, and I, looked through and just really cold sending my resume in, and there was a position open at A&E. And honestly, for the years I've been out of law school, it probably was a little junior. But I hadn't done that work. I had done the talk, which was different than working in production is different than doing the licensing. But I'd also worked at a pharmaceutical company. And I remember interviewing at a record label when I first moved to New York, and they said, well, we really need you to have some experience, licensing songs. I was like, but I've licensed things you can't pronounce. Like, I couldn't pronounce at the pharmaceutical company. I can do music, but, so I was like, let me take my experience from doing the corporate side of when I worked at a pharmaceutical company and my production work in television, and combine those two, and I could sell myself at that point, having had the television experience, and that's how I ended up where I am now.
Very cool, thank you. And we have these themes of tenacity and adaptability, but most importantly, putting yourself in the path of opportunity and serendipity. If you stay in your closed circle, you stay in your room, jobs just aren't going to come to you. Getting yourself out there makes all of the difference. So, Nicolette, take us to our final question.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about adaptability. So this is such a rapidly changing industry. So I want everyone to share how they've embraced change through their career paths, and what advice would you give to those of us who are starting our careers in such a rapidly changing industry? We'll start with Zenita.
Stay flexible.
Oh, yeah.
Be adaptable. And again, be nice to everybody, because as you're going through that change, a lot of people get promotions not because they're good, but because they know somebody. So definitely, I have to stay. I stay on the be kind side of things. And then also, you need to stay up on top of your skills and just be open. I can tell you from all the years of being in the cable industry that the first words out of your mouth when someone asks you to do something and you say, oh, well, we've always done it this way, don't ever use those words. You heard me say it right now, you'll never hear me say that again, unless I'm giving it as advice. You definitely, if someone comes to you, please start high. Keep your mind open to think about, someone's asking you to do something. Be a problem solver, and be able to, if they come to you with a question and say, hey, we'd like to do a change of something in your organization, don't look at the negative first. Digest the question, think about it. And even if you have to tell them, look, let me go back and think about it and come back and give you, a proper answer. Don't start low with, I get a lot of the exusion of air is what I get. And no, just take it in, keep a clear mind, and always be a problem solver. That's what kept me in the industry, and I definitely have shared that with every panel that I am on, and across any career, whether it's technical, non-technical. As you hear, there's a lot of diversity here of jobs in the cable industry. You don't have to be an engineer, but every job in our industry, and on the cable side or programming, is just a hell of a lot of fun. And even in the legal field, my biggest part of my day, I used to love when the legal department would come to me and say, we're doing these contracts for this HDTV. Like, what is that? And, and I'd be like, oh, you don't know what that is? And telling them what that is, that was the best part of my day, was to hear from the legal department who was signing major $1 or $1 billion contracts for stuff that they didn't even know what it was. So that's my advice, is just to stay flexible, stay adaptable, and always keep an open mind when someone comes to you. And yes, in the back of your mind, you might be going, oh my God, that's like the worst idea ever. But now, people don't want to hear that their baby is ugly, right? Think about it, digest it, and come back with a really good recommendation that kind of comes in the middle to make everybody happy.
Perfect, thank you.
I don't know if I could word it any better. Yeah, definitely stay humble. Your work is not better than anybody else's work. Maybe you're given the smaller tasks, but it's just as important in order to make this process happen, to get the job done. Obviously, stay kind, stay open-minded. In my field, I work on a job for 6 months maybe, and then I gotta find another job. So talk to everybody, be kind to everybody, get to know a person, because people like to work with people they like. Get to know them on a personal level. Don't make it just about work.
Yes, I agree with both of you. I think, change is inevitable. We're in a moment in time, especially in media, that things are changing by the day. when you look at the landscape, it's every day there's a new announcement from Facebook, from Twitter, that we're having to then adapt our, plans to, or we are, creating a new content series to, satisfy something that we've learned about our customers through all of this research that we've done, right? So regardless of what your specific role is, this change will impact you, right? So you want to be seen as someone who is there to help with anything, right? It could be a small task, it could be a big task. I mean, even in my role now, there are some small tasks that I just will take on myself because, they need to get done. And I think, you want to be seen in an organization and by other, leaders and by other colleagues as solutions oriented. We talk about that a lot in our organization, not only a problem solver, but, don't just solve the problem, come up with like a better way for us to do this and be excited about it and get everybody's buy-in. And that type of behavior is invaluable in any company. That's the type of person that every company is out there looking to hire. So I think positioning yourself in that way and, giving really, when you're interviewing, really making that clear that you're a team player and you just want to help the team progress and the company overall, the group overall, whatever their goals may be. You want to help them, attain their goals.
Amen.
So.
That's it right there.
And Robin.
I think flexibility is like one of the most important things that has been set up here. Be prepared, be flexible, be out there. And I think the other thing it's very important is what you're doing now, network. It often is timing. It's about who you've met. It's about who you've met and you've made an impression on. But be genuinely yourself, right? Because you want to work with people who you get along with and who are going to, it's a lot of time you spend at work. You spend a lot of your time at work. So you want to be very conscious of where you go, and you want to go to these places for the right reason. And also understand, and I'm stealing this from someone else when I heard it, and I was saying earlier that, mentors are great, and you do want to have mentors as you move along in your career, people who you can talk to and can give you sound advice, but there's also such thing as a sponsor, and that's the person who, when you're going, when it's time for a promotion, when it's time for, or you're looking for a job, it's that person who knows you well enough and knows your work product well enough, and you've proven yourself, who can go in there and speak for you. Because it may be the difference in a room where you have you and some other person, and there's nobody there who knows the other person well enough, and someone says, but I do know them, and I've worked with them, and they are, collaborative, and they are collegial, and they really do work hard. They're responsive. A lot of times you may not have the answer, but people just want to know that you acknowledge that they asked the question. So, you have to respect other people and yourself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so
everybody. Now, usually we close with questions from the audience, but I see that we're at wrap-up time here. We can take 2 questions. I'm getting signaled by Dolly. We can take 2 questions. Somebody be brave. Come on up and ask any question of our panelists.
That's another great piece of advice. Be brave. Be fearless.
Here, come on up. I think they have a microphone right here.
And if that's not set up, I could lend you mine.
Hi guys, I'm Madeline. Nice to meet all of you. I really appreciate you guys coming to PACE. I'm a PACE Lubin student. I actually just had a kind of specific question. I'm only a sophomore, but I was wondering, when you guys were kind of getting into your field and finding careers that you started to find interest in, I guess, because you all started a little bit different than where you are now. How did you approach somebody and say, oh, if you meet somebody, oh, I would love to know more about your work, or I would love to shadow you at work. How do you kind of approach that situation as somebody that you're not really have a personal relationship with yet? And that's my question.
Yep, I think you started with an example.
That's a great question. I think it's just, first of all, be yourself. And the way you just said it is perfectly great. You can, if you're meeting people here, just approach them, be yourself, and say, listen, your job sounds so interesting to me. I would love nothing more than to spend some more time with you, whether that's coffee or shadowing you. I would be shocked if anyone said no to that, because people generally, I find, most people just want to help other people. So if you're just yourself and you are genuine and you share that and position it the same way, ask the same way that you just said it to us, that comes across as like, oh wow, she really just wants to learn more. And that's, I think, speaks to your curiosity and your interest in, the person that you're speaking to.
Yeah. And just for all of us, beginnings are awkward. Going over and initiating a conversation, being open and saying, I'm curious about these things, it's awkward. So you have to be open to that feeling and then work through it, because that's how you make the progress that's there as well. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One more. Yes?
So, everyone here works in television. My name is Nick. I'm a current student at NYU, and for the past 10 years, we've seen each year there's been more television shows made than the last, and I'm curious how you think young people can prepare themselves for an industry where that may not be the case in 5 years, and we start seeing a decline and a bit of the bubble burst.
Well, you're on the signing side of some of this, and why don't you field that one?
I don't know if there's any other way. First of all, for us, we had to prepare ourselves for the number that's being made now. So that, that was such a different, and it happened so quickly. I don't know if I would say prepare yourself in any different way, but be prepared, right? Because if there are less shows, you're gonna, you view that as less jobs. But there's still so many more platforms that, the platforms aren't going away, and the way that these shows are distributed, and there's also, there's always something new. So if that is the case, there's just going to be something else.
And it's about storytelling, right? So that skill of becoming a storyteller, whether that's creating content for, a website or for print or for TV, it's about connection, right? And so building those skills to be able to tell stories and to really get through to viewers or readers or whatever medium, it is a common thread. So, it's something to consider as far as the mediums are all a little bit different, the platforms are all a little bit different, and you'll have to be familiar. But that skill and that kind of, the way that you tell stories and the way that you can tell stories across different platforms is what's most important.
Yeah, and also just totally understand, nobody can base what's happening today and say, therefore, this is going to happen tomorrow. I had Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix, on a panel the day that he announced that he was going to start streaming. His stock dropped 35% because everybody knew it was the stupidest idea ever. I've seen the death of sitcom. Nobody will ever do sitcoms again. I've seen scripted is out. Everybody only wants unscripted, and now we've seen the explosion of scripted. So taking a look at this and saying, okay, based on what's happening now, it's definitely going to be this next year. Just know it's going to be something different. All right, and thank you to my wonderful panelists, to my co-moderator, and to all of you, thank you.